Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for December 11th, 2017. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the first reactions to Star Wars The Last Jedi. I'm going to play a clip from my Mark Hamill interview, him talking about, is Luke Skywalker still a hero? The 2018 Golden Globe nominations have been announced. We're going to go over that, who has been snubbed, who has been nominated. We have learned a little bit more on the story for the Venom movie. We will have reactions for a couple of trailers that broke over the weekend, including the Spider-Man animated movie and Ready Player One. And we'll give an update on Louis C.K.'s I Love You, Daddy, and the future of the Fantastic Four. So we have a lot going on today, including a water cooler. This is Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
So two of us have seen Star Wars. One of us hasn't.
I have not.
Did they not invite you to a screening in DC, HD?
No, I'm a loser who doesn't get invited to screenings.
We need to get you on the screening list somehow. But Chris, you just got back from seeing the movie.
Did. I came zooming home from the theater to get here.
I think the review embargo, it doesn't break until tomorrow. There's a social embargo that is broken. So I guess give the response you kind of gave on social media, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like as long as you don't go into spoiler details, that covers it.
Oh, and by the way, we are not going to talk any spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi on this podcast, so you can go into this feeling free that, it's going to be as vague as possible. Okay, go on.
Do you want me to give my thoughts first?
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I really liked it. I honestly think this is the best directed Star Wars film yet of all of them. Honestly, I think I liked the story of The Force Awakens just like a tiny bit more, but the direction on this is fantastic. It's a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. It's a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. It's a very entertaining movie. There are about 10 specific scenes in this movie that are like tailor-made to make the audience lose their minds. And I know because the audience I was with was literally just losing their minds just now.
Yeah, there's things in this movie that happen that you don't think would even happen in this sequel Star Wars trilogy, never mind happen in this film. And you're right, like there's those holy shit moments, and it's so very different. I'm basically saying what you just said. It's very different, it's exciting, it's surprising, it's a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. Even like, scenes with Carrie Fisher that are not supposed to be played for emotion are very emotional, just watching her on the big screen. Unintentional after effects of her death. And I would say try to stay away from spoilers. I know we've had the spoiler discussion on here to death, and I know I've been on the side of spoilers can't ruin a movie, and I still do believe that. But I do believe that this movie is, for better or for worse, so relying on kind of these holy shit moments that you might want to not be spoiled on those things, because it's
right.
Yeah. So
I want to add that if you're worried that you might have been spoiled by fan theories, don't worry, you're not, because almost every fan theory I saw leading up before this film is like dead wrong. So I was really impressed by that almost no one predicted how this film actually turned out.
Yeah, and something that actually I think is surprising is I think John Boyega said this at the press conference, that this movie is more of a war movie than any of the other Star Wars movies, and the opening and ending action scenes are more of a war, like, it feels more like a war, like an action scene from a war movie than it does any of the other Star Wars movies. It's I think the opening one is kind of like a masterclass in filmmaking. I'm excited for people to see it, including UHT.
I'm very excited.
Yes. Before we get to the other reactions from that, though, what have you done over the weekend?
Well, since I didn't get to go see Star Wars, I instead went to see Darkest Hour, which is the newest film starring Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill and is directed by Joe Wright. And it's sort of part of my catch up on the movies of 2017 and potential Oscar awards nominees. So it was a good film. I enjoyed it. I'm surprised by how much I enjoy Joe Wright films, because his films tend to sort of fade from my memory after a little bit, apart from Pride and Prejudice, which was one of my favorite films growing up. But he has this really interesting musicality to the way he directs, and this is a very tense, gripping movie, and Gary Oldman is excellent in it. He's amazing and definitely deserving of a Best Actor nomination, which we'll get into later. But I for the most part enjoyed it. It was a movie that definitely felt more like a vehicle for Gary Oldman, but tapped into that sort of British patriotism we've been feeling more lately, especially after Dunkirk came out earlier this summer.
For sure. And also this weekend I saw The Greatest Showman, but I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that yet. There isn't a clear embargo on that, but I'll be talking about that soon. But that's what I did over the weekend. Chris and H, you didn't watch any TV, see anything else interesting?
I rewatched Molly's Game with my wife. I'm at that point now where movies I've seen already, I'm rewatching with my wife that I've gotten them on screeners for Oscar season. So I'm basically watching everything I've seen already again.
Now, I know Molly's Game was a film, it's Aaron Sorkin's directorial debut, and you were not that impressed with it when you saw it at TIFF. Seeing it a second time, did you same feeling?
Yeah,
or?
I actually liked it a lot more the second time, I will admit. I didn't hate it at TIFF. A lot of people I was talking to there were sort of like blown away by it, and I was kind of underwhelmed. But watching it again, I appreciated it just a little bit more. I do still think Aaron Sorkin is a better writer than he is a director. But beyond that, it's an entertaining movie. It moves very quickly, and it's sort of like a crowd-pleasing movie. So I feel like when it comes out, people will enjoy it.
Okay, let's get into the news, guys. We gave our brief Star Wars reactions, but we were not the only ones that. I was not the only one who was at the premiere, and I'm not the only one that has seen it. So there's a lot of reactions here. Chris, could you give us a sample of a couple of the better reactions, and let's see if they compare to ours.
Right. Almost everyone has a very similar reaction that we talked about earlier, where people are saying intense, funny, emotional, exciting. It's jam-packed with absolute jaw-dropping moments, and I loved it so much. I'm still shaking. What else we got? We got absolutely beautifully shot, hilarious, and full of standout hero moments for everyone. To be clear, The Last Jedi has some story and character issues. It's a little overcrowded and wastes some of the characters, but those are really minor quibbles in the grand scheme of how much I liked it. Cannot overestimate just how gorgeous this film is. I salute you, Rian Johnson. Some of these shots are all-timers and then some. And that's another thing I would agree with. This does look amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people have, since seeing the film, have been asking me, where does this rank in, my ranking of the Star Wars movies? How does this compare to J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens? And I think it's too early. Like, I'm still figuring out my, I still need to see the movie again, and I'm probably going to see it, at least a few more times in theaters. But I did say on Twitter, because people were asking me, how does it compare to Force Awakens? I think, well, before I answer that, let me just say that, number one, I loved Force Awakens more than most people. I think I didn't have the sameness issues that a lot of people had, aside from, Death Star number 3. Number two, this is a very different movie, which I think will please a lot of people. It has many moments that are, holy shit, better than Force Awakens. Like, the highs are much higher than Force Awakens, in my opinion. But in the end of the day, I think, at least after one viewing, I think I like Force Awakens a tad more. And I know people are going to, freak out over that comment. I just think Force Awakens might end up being a more rewatchable film. Like, this is so concerned with plot and story and twists and turns. And Force Awakens is more about, character introductions and fun moment. Do you know what I mean? Like it's more, I think, digestible film to like for you watch over and over again.
Right.
Chris, do you have any feelings on this?
I agree with you. Force Awakens, I don't know. I guess there's like some sort of weird backlash to that now, but I love Force Awakens. It's actually one of that might be my favorite Star Wars movie, which I'm sure is blasphemy to some people, but I don't care. It's a fun movie. I loved the introduction to Rey in that movie. Anytime anyone brings up, Rey as a Mary Sue, I get very angry because I don't agree with that at all. And I think her character is handled really well in that. I do think if I have any criticism about The Last Jedi, it's that it very much feels like the middle part of a story. And I feel like The Force Awakens, even though it had that sort of cliffhanger ending, and sort of literally actually, but it felt more self-contained. And this film feels very much like the middle part of a trilogy, which is fine. I'm not complaining about that, but I do wish it were just a little bit more self-contained.
I can see that. But we will get more into The Last Jedi later this week. I think on Tuesday morning, the embargo breaks, and we'll have a bunch of coverage, including my spoiler-free reaction, which isn't 100% positive. So you'll have to read my nitpicks that I have with the film. But overall, I really, really like the film a lot. I would say it's close to Force Awakens. But okay. Last week, I covered the World or the Hollywood junket for The Last Jedi, and I talked to Mark Hamill, and this is before I got to see the movie. All the press covering this junket basically, went in there asking questions, haven't seen only the trailers. But one of the questions I did ask Mark Hamill was, is Luke still a hero even though he has run away? And I thought that was, we record our interviews in audio, so I thought, why not present that audio here for you to listen to? So here is the audio from my interview with Mark Hamill. Luke Skywalker was a hero in the original trilogy, and I think him, and to a certain extent Han Solo, after Return of the Jedi, ran away from things. Does that make... Let's forget Han Solo. Does that make Luke any less of a hero?
Well, you're hitting a point that was a bone of contention. Because you see in the trailer, he says, I know when truth it's time for the Jedi to end.
Yeah.
And I said to Rian, what are you talking about? A Jedi doesn't give up. If they make a wrong, they try and make it right. That was a big kind of thing, and I had to realize it's not for me to decide. When I see what he was doing what my function in the script was, my job was to put my own personal feelings aside and do my best to realize his vision. Not Mark Hamill's vision, Rian Johnson's vision. Whether I agreed with it or not. Because, I used to say to George, it was funny, why can't Luke have a girlfriend? Eventually I heard in the extended universe there's Mara Jade, and he got married, he had kids. I still don't know. Are Jedi supposed to be celibate, or can they be married with children? You answer that.
I think supposedly they're supposed to be celibate, but you're kind of hinting into something I was going to ask you, and that is, when I saw that line in the trailer, and I'm just seeing the trailer, I'm not seeing the film, so I don't know the context line. I kind of think of the Catholic religion, and is your character is kind of saying this organized religion has turned this thing that was good into something bad. Right. And it's time to is that...
Well, that's a good way to go. Another way to go is what I say. Look, a lot of times in acting, you have to find things that are parallel in your own life to know how to react emotionally in any given scenario. And so I thought, I was of the Beatles generation, and I bought that all you need is love. I said, by the time I get to be, our generation is in power, there'll be no more wars, There'll be no more racial discrimination. There'll be peace and harmony. We failed. Arguably, the world is worse now than it was in the 60s and early 70s. So I drew upon that to try and figure out why Luke was so disillusioned, why he so tragically failed. You know, he did fail. Obviously, he thought Ben Solo was the chosen one, and he was wrong. Now he's almost responsible for the rise of the next Darth Vader. Now, that's where you get into the weeds, because my contention was he wouldn't let that go. He would try and correct that. But for the purposes of the story, and without really revealing too much, you'll understand more when you see it. And again, I totally trust Rian, and I think he's done a spectacular job.
Lawrence Kasdan said this film was strange, or the script was strange. I think was his wording, or weird, one of those two words. And I've heard some people said it's different than what you think it's going to be. And you even said at the press conference, the line that epitomizes this movie is, "This is not going to go the way you think."
Right.
What does that mean? Like what?
Well, Luke says that to a character in the film, and I was just saying, in retrospect, when I read the script and It's Time for the Jedi at Hand, I just couldn't get beyond that, and quite frankly, that's not going the way I thought it would. But isn't that a good thing? In other words, if it's predictable, everyone will say, "Oh, okay, this happens, that happens. It's no surprise." Even the fact that I'm not the benevolent Jedi that's training others and giving advice and delivering information as Guinness came to me in Empire and so forth. We've seen that before, Yeah. I tell you the truth. When my son said, "Dad, there's a novel out there where they clone an evil Luke from your severed hand," I went, "Oh, baby, would I love that." And when I told Rian, he says, "Oh, I love that too, but it's been done. We've got to do something that's never been done before." But actors, we all want to play our own evil twin. Twice the screen time, It's all Man in the Iron Mask time where you get to play your own twin. Betty Davis and Dead Ringer.
Is Luke still a hero?
Well, I think...
And is he the chosen one? Who was the chosen one? Actually, that's a better question.
Well, that does get into spoiler territory. The thing about Luke that I thought was special was that how unremarkable a person he was. When we first meet him, he's sort of clueless. He's a farm boy, and I think that's the entry-level character that young people will relate to because, Han Solo's a little intimidating. He's kind of cynical. Carrie is royalty.
Yeah.
Guinness is a wizard. Luke, he's the everyman. But it says that anybody has the potential to, if they do the right thing and they do things for the greater good, rather than selflessly without any element of self-aggrandizement, that everyone has the potential to become a hero. So I think he'll always be a hero, even if he's a fallen hero, even if he's a flawed hero, or if he's a failure as a hero. But obviously, it's not my story anymore.
Yeah.
The focus now is on the new protagonist, played by Daisy Ridley.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Some great answers.
Well, I should become a politician. I can talk for hours and not answer your questions.
Yeah, you're brilliant at weaving.
Thank you. Dodging and weaving.
And there it is. And obviously, Chris and I have seen the movie. We know what's going to happen. So I'm not going to comment any further. But HT, you have not seen the movie. So my question to you, is Luke Skywalker a coward? Is he still a hero, even though he has kind of run away from everything?
Well, I don't think coward and hero are mutually exclusive terms. We've seen Luke battle with the dark side before and not given in to that sort of evil inherent in him. And in this case, I don't think that is a battle that we're seeing again. It's just a matter of him not being able or having failed his former pupil and, kind of fleeing from that. But I'm not really sure why, for example. Like, we don't really go into the details from the previews and everything we've seen so far of why he's left and why he's fled and gone into exile. But I'm willing to accept that he's still a hero, and if not, a hero's mentor, because we don't need to have the mentor be exactly fully heroic either. So I think maybe he's a more broken and weary man. I don't think he's any less good or heroic than he was before.
Well, the world will find out later this week. But let's move on from that. This morning, the nominations for the 2018 Golden Globes was announced. HT, you wrote this up for the site. What do we need to know, and who has been snubbed?
So the biggest winners from the Golden Globe nominations so far, I say winners in terms of how many awards they've sort of swept, is The Shape of Water, which has a whopping 7 nominations, including Best Motion Picture Drama, 3 acting categories, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Score. So it's gotten the most nominations of all the films so far. And we've seen other sort of surprise films that have surprisingly large number of nominations, like The Greatest Showman, which snuck in with the Best Motion Picture Comedy or Musical, and a lot of nominations for All the Money in the World, despite it being sort of reworked 2 weeks before the release of the film. Christopher Plummer, for example, got a nomination for Best Supporting Actor. A couple snubs, I will say, are The Big Sick, which got completely shut out of the awards. Florida Project only got 1 nomination, which is Willem Dafoe for Best Supporting Actor. And I think those are the biggest snubs. Oh, definitely Greta Gerwig.
Female directors.
Yes. No female directors. Greta Gerwig, Dee Reese, Angelina Jolie, none of them got any nominations. And Jordan Peele also didn't get a nomination for Get Out, even though that one got 3 nominations for Best Comedy or Musical and Best Actor and Screenplay, I think. So there are a lot of snubs here. I know there's a big argument going around, like Golden Globes tend to, and the Hollywood Foreign Press tends to sort of reward the bigger stars, as we can see with The Greatest Showman and Hugh Jackman, which kind of took the slot that I would expect The Big Sick to get. But it's still sort of the precursor to the Oscars in the way that we tend to shape the awards race. So I hope that this doesn't mean any more shutting out for The Big Sick, because that is an excellent film and should have at least deserved a screenplay nomination or the Best Comedy or Musical slot.
But that category is made for that movie.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
So it's odd. There's also fewer nominations for Call Me By Your Name than I expected. I think there were only 3 nominations, which included Best Performance by an Actor, Best Supporting, and Best Drama. But otherwise, there weren't many. They didn't get Best Song, which people expected. And in terms of TV, Big Little Lies sort of led the pack. And Twin Peaks is counted as TV by the Golden Globes.
Take that Best of the Year film list that include Twin Peaks. Let's move on from the Golden Globes to the Spidey universe. And first we'll talk about Venom. You have this article on the site basically outlining which 2 comic book storylines are going to be the basis for this Venom movie. So what do we know, HD?
Yeah, so director Ruben Fleischer, I think that's how you say his name, has announced that he will be drawing inspiration for the Venom movie starring Tom Hardy from these 2 comic book runs, which are Lethal Protector and Planet of Symbiotes. So Lethal Protector was a 1993 limited series by David Michelini, and it kind of marked Venom's first turn from ambiguous villain to full-fledged antihero. And it followed him making a new start in San Francisco, and then ending up teaming up with Spider-Man to defeat 5 new offspring of the Venom symbiote. And then Planet of the Symbiotes, which was published 2 years later, follows an invasion of symbiotes, of an army of symbiotes on Earth. So Venom attempts to sort of stop this invasion by teaming up with Spider-Man again and Scarlet Spider, and also investigating a series of murders that he believes to have committed himself. And this is also where Carnage makes an appearance as the villain. So you can see pieces from these plots sort of scattered throughout the vague details we have of this film. We know that it's going to be set in San Francisco, so that comes from Lethal Protector, and that Carnage is rumored to be the main villain, so that will likely pull from Planet of Symbiotes. So we're kind of gathering more from the details about this movie. It's still quite vague, yeah, it's still happening, guys. It's a movie that's existing. So we'll see if they pull it off, because as you saw in the two arcs that were named, they both heavily involve Spider-Man. So we'll see if we can have a Venom movie that cuts Spider-Man off completely.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, can you do that? Can you take two comic book storylines that involve Spider-Man heavily, cut him out, and mash them together into a good final product? It just sounds like, people make fun of Hollywood, and this just sounds like something they would make fun of in a SNL sketch. But we'll have to see. I don't know. Who knows? It could end up being good. But talking about Spider-Man, over the weekend, the trailer for Sony's Spider-Man animated movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which might be like one of the worst titles for a superhero movie ever, was released online. And I wanted to talk to you guys about this. Let's have a little bit of a reaction to this trailer. And I remember at CinemaCon last year, the Sony people said that this movie was going to look unlike anything you've seen before. And boy, does this trailer look like unlike anything I've seen before. It looks like they're doing computer animation, but it almost looks like stop motion animation. It's a really cool style. What did you guys think of this trailer?
I really like this trailer. I didn't expect to like it as much because animated films tend to not be as high quality as live action films. That's kind of the guarantee. But this trailer was timed and animated gorgeously. Like you said, the animation looks very stunning and stylistic, but it also looks somewhat hyper-realistic in some aspects. I think they might have used some form of rotoscoping maybe in some of the street shots. Rotoscoping is a form of animation in which animators trace over real-life portraits or pictures and turn it into animation. So it looks heavily realistic in some parts and sort of like a combination of both CGI and that. I'm just totally guessing, though, so I'm not sure. But it looks really gorgeous, and like the hip-hop beat that they have throbbing underneath it is really good and intense. So I liked it a lot. I was surprised.
And I love that they're delving into a Spider-Man that's not Peter Parker. We see Peter Parker's tombstone there. And you mentioned, usually the superhero animated films are not, the quality of the live action films, but this is like going to be a theatrical animated film, and Phil Lord is involved in this movie. I don't know. Seeing this trailer, and I know we haven't seen this movie yet, but it makes me wonder, why is Disney not doing animated Marvel movies? Not that we need all of Disney's movies to be Marvel movies, but I don't know. It seems like it's a market that we haven't really tapped into, is animated superhero movies, for the big screen. I know that they're doing a lot of the direct to DVD kind of stuff. Chris, what is your opinion on this trailer?
Yeah, I'll say I didn't have much interest in it, but the trailer really swayed me. It was very stylish to the point that it has my attention. I mean, I don't want it to just be style over substance, of course, but visually this looks more exciting than most recent animated films in memory. So on that basis alone, I'm definitely going to give it a shot, see how it turns out.
From that trailer to another trailer that debuted at Comic-Con Brazil, and that is for Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, which the first trailer debuted at Comic-Con in San Diego, and I was so pumped and excited for this movie, and that trailer was amazing. It was like a mashup of epic proportions. This trailer, not so much for me. I don't know. Maybe it's that I don't get a lot of the video game references that are kind of smacked into this trailer, and it seems a little bit more goofier. HT, what are your thoughts on this trailer?
I'm not quite excited for Ready Player One. I read the book, and I did not like it very much. I thought that it was sort of a shallow, not homage, but like it was a very, very reference heavy, shallow send up to like 80s culture and nostalgia without having quite a message about it. And it felt sort of like it's imbued a sense of toxic masculinity throughout. I'm hoping that Steven Spielberg will take this franchise and turn it into a clever film. But the trailers so far haven't really convinced me. Like you said, it's just kind of a bunch of references that I don't really understand. Some of them that I can see, but none that really strike a chord with me. And the animation within Oasis just feels very uncanny valley to me, which is not something that you want to see for that a movie takes place when a movie takes place entirely within this virtual reality system. So yeah, I'm not quite excited. I do like the supporting actors who are there. So Mark Rylance and Ben Mendelsohn showed up, and I kind of forgot that they were there, and that surprised me pleasantly. So yeah, I'm very hesitant and wary about Ready Player One.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I love Spielberg. We talked before about how The Post is great, so I still think Spielberg still has it, but I really don't know how I feel about this. I haven't read the book, but I've read excerpts of it, and the excerpts sort of make my skin crawl. They're very just, it's literally just one reference after it. It's like, then I got into the DeLorean, and then I went, and it's just like one thing after another. I don't really like his style of writing, so I have no desire to actually read the book. But again, like I said, I love Spielberg, so I'm willing to give it a chance for him, and I do love that cast, especially Ben Mendelsohn. So I guess we'll see. I mean, it seems like this sounds like a snobby thing to say, but I feel like Spielberg is better than this sort of material. I don't really know why he's turning this into a film, but again, I trust him enough that if he saw something here, there must be something that he was interested in. So I guess we'll see.
Well, Spielberg's supposedly a huge video gamer. I've heard everybody say that. I just can't picture Steven Spielberg, with an Xbox or PlayStation controller, playing, one of the latest, like Uncharted games or something. It just doesn't.
That's a cute little image, though.
Yeah. And I know he's heavily kind of invested in VR and interested in VR. So I think he probably sees something there, but it's just, I don't know. And I'm a huge Steven Spielberg fan as well. And I actually would like to see him do more kind of populist movies, that are, that can reach more people like his early films did. But I don't know. This trailer was not that exciting. By the way, that poster, I know it's gone viral, but there's like, the guy climbing up the pole and his leg is like twice as long as it should be. What were they thinking? And also, why did they not hire Drew Struzan to do a poster for this movie? Like, it seems like, the most obvious thing. Like, this is a movie about 80s nostalgia. Drew Struzan, who's the artist who created all the posters of, any 80s kid's childhood, he should have been hired instead of like this Photoshop leg thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the very least they could have tried to emulate his style or any 80s movie poster style that's tried. I didn't even think of that connection, but that leg, it's haunting. It like the minute I saw that, I was like, I actually thought it was like a parody of the real poster. I was like, oh, someone took the real poster and used like the elongate tool in Photoshop. But no, that's the real poster, and I don't know how that happened.
And the poster itself looks so dull too. It just looks like a typical YA film, so I'm not really sure what they're going for there.
Yeah,
it looks like a Maze Runner sequel.
Yeah, if you're gonna make an 80s mashup kind of movie, why not put all the mashups on the poster? I don't know. And I'm not sure if you guys saw, but someone created that poster, but it was just the leg climbing up the whole pole. I don't know. It's just insane. But moving on, we've been talking a lot about Louis C.K. and his movie I Love You, Daddy was kind of pulled from the release schedule after the allegations against him. We now have word on what is going on with that film. Chris, what do we know?
Right. So after the scandal broke involving sexual misconduct allegations against Louis C.K., which he admitted to being true, The Orchard, who were going to release his film I Love You, Daddy, pulled it from release. And it sort of sounded like, oh, that was the last we'd hear about this for a while. But news broke that Louis C.K. is going to buy the film back from The Orchard, and he's doing it in such a way that The Orchard isn't actually going to lose any money over that, so that's good for them. I don't know what he's going to do with the movie now. I've actually heard through the grapevine that the film actually has already leaked online, which I find is interesting because that leak came right after this news that he's buying it back. So I don't know if he leaked it himself or someone. I don't know how that happened, but it's apparently online.
If he's buying it back, if he's spending money to buy it back, I don't think he would leak it online.
I don't either, but it's weird that it happened so soon after this news.
I mean, I'm betting you what his plans were probably going to be was, he's been doing a lot of that stuff of releasing a stand-up special, or what was that TV show he released online and people could pay?
Horace and Pete.
Yeah, I'm betting that was the plan, is to release it online, pay your own price, and try to prove that people would still see this movie.
I guess. I can't imagine. I don't know who actually wants to watch this movie at this point. Even, I'll confess, I've seen this film because I was one of the people that got sent an award screener for it. The Orchard sent out award screeners right as the news broke, and it was too late to recall them. So I've seen it, and it's not a good movie. And I'll confess to, I used to be a Louis C.K. fan before all this news broke, and I've washed my hands of him. But even if you're a former fan of his, there's really nothing in this movie to enjoy. It's just a very toxic, nasty film, and it's sort of like he just filmed a confession about all his misdeeds, and there's sort of like a hubris there where he thought I can just get away with it, and he didn't. So it's just strange. I don't know who wants to even watch that at this point.
Well, maybe it's just the morbid curiosity of this whole thing, and controversy around a film like that. I think it gets some interest, but I'm not interested. Last up in the news, we've been talking about the potential deal from Disney to buy Fox, and we have assumed that would reunite the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As it turns out, some new details suggest that the Fantastic Four might be left out of that deal. HT, what do we know?
So this goes into the sort of troubled history of Fantastic Four's movie rights, which I'll try to summarize. But it's because when Marvel was optioning off the rights to their most popular characters back when they were having trouble with bankruptcy or on the verge of bankruptcy in the late 70s to 90s, Stan Lee reportedly had such an affection for the Fantastic Four, which were his first characters that he created under Marvel, that he set out to find a suitable buyer for the movie rights. So this resulted in him landing upon Constantine Film, which is a German production company, which ended up being responsible for the Roger Corman B movie that never got released. So they optioned the movie rights to Fantastic Four and had to keep. The only way they were able to keep those movie rights was to create that Roger Corman B film. And it kind of languished for a little bit. And in order for them to retain those rights again, Constantine Film partnered with 20th Century Fox, which at this point had their deal with the X-Men, with Marvel, and that was going well. So they created a partnership with 20th Century Fox to try to strike a deal with Marvel to get an extension for their contract. So this is what resulted in the 20th Century Fox Constantine Film co-production of the 2005 Fantastic Four. So that kind of collaborative partnership has lasted till now. Constantine and 20th Century Fox still kind of share movie rights to Fantastic Four. So we're not really sure where Constantine Film's rights end and where 20th Century Fox begins. Thus far, Constantine Film has dealt with the production of Fantastic Four films, whereas 20th Century has had distribution rights. So it seems that if this Disney 20th Century Fox deal goes through, Fantastic Four would still stay with Constantine Films and not go under the 20th Century Fox banner. So that's the whole complicated mess of it.
So that's interesting. If true, that means that the Fantastic Four rights could be shopped around to another studio, could end up at Universal, could end up at Warner Brothers. I kind of wonder if, like, is it possible to... I'm wondering how much creative control Marvel has in all this. Like, is it possible for, them to shop it to Warner Brothers and have the Fantastic Four join the DCEU in some way? I'm betting I'm betting Marvel has some kind of creativity clause in the making of these films, even though they don't control the rights. But I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. It seems like this Disney deal is going down. Last I heard, they were going over the fine points of it. So we'll have to see what happens. But that does it for the news today. HT, where can we find more of your work online?
You can find me at /film.com. I'm on Twitter at HTranBui, and I have a podcast, the Millennial Falcon Podcast, on iTunes.
Chris, where can we find you?
I'm also at /film.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
You can find me at /film.com. You can find me at /film on Twitter. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast. Just search for /film daily. We have show notes with extensive links covering all the stories we talked about today. So if you're looking for something in particular that we talked about, you can find a link to it there. You can send us emails, peter at /film.com. Give us questions, feedback, concerns, anything, peter at /film.com. And we will see you tomorrow.